She walked into their trap with the perfect weapon. You're about to be ambushed on live television. Millions watching. The host thinks he has you cornered with a leaked document that could end your career. But here's the twist. You brought the same document, and yours tells the whole story. This is what happened when Karoline Leavitt turned the tables on one of the most powerful news anchors in America. And it all started with 3 innocent lines in an email. Karoline was checking her phone when the message appeared. An invitation to Anderson Cooper's primetime show. They wanted to talk about GOP strategy and communications. The email promised something that made her laugh out loud. A respectful and fair discussion. Right. Because that's exactly what this network was known for. Within minutes, her communications director burst through her door. His face was pale. He had intel from Capitol Hill. Producers were circulating a leaked internal memo. Her name was all over it. The plan was simple. Blindside her with it live on air and watch her squirm. Most people would panic. Most people would cancel. Karoline Leavitt is not most people. She stood up, straightened her blazer, and delivered a line that would become legendary. Good. Let them try. The studio that night felt like a courtroom. Anderson Cooper positioned himself under the blazing lights, holding a black folder like it contained state secrets. The backdrop glowed an ominous blue behind him. Karoline sat across from him, perfectly composed in her navy suit. Her silver cross caught the light as she waited. She didn't look nervous. She looked ready. Anderson launched his attack with surgical precision. He spoke about leaked documents and internal GOP communications. Her name appeared 7 times in the memo, he announced. Then came what he thought was his knockout punch, a devastating quote. Leavitt is useful when emotional, but dangerous when unscripted. The silence hung in the air. Anderson waited for the usual political dance. The denials, the deflections, the stammering explanations. What happened next shocked everyone watching. Karoline didn't flinch. She didn't deny anything. Instead, she smiled and said 5 words that changed everything. I don't need to deny it. Then she reached into her own folder. Out came the exact same memo Anderson had just quoted from. But something was different about her copy. It was thicker, more complete. I brought the full version, she said, holding it up to the camera. Would you like me to read it? Anderson's confidence cracked. You could see it in his eyes. That moment when a hunter realizes they've become the hunted. The atmosphere in the studio shifted like a storm rolling in. Behind the cameras, producers scrambled. This wasn't how the script was supposed to go. They had planned for Karoline to stumble, to get defensive, to lose control. Instead, she was reading their own playbook back to them. Karoline's voice stayed calm and clear as she flipped to the previous paragraph. You quoted part of Section A. 5, she said. But let's give the audience Sections 4 and 6 for context. She looked directly into the camera lens. Section 4 reads, Leavitt's media appearances, while occasionally unpredictable, have activated a previously disengaged youth voting bloc, particularly among suburban conservative women. She paused and glanced at Anderson. Not so emotional after all. Then came the real bombshell. Karoline turned to Section 6 and read slowly. If networks choose to press her on media manipulation or party infighting, pivot to leadership quotes. Do not let her speak freely in extended segments. She looked up with a razor-sharp smile. Seems someone at the network took that memo seriously. The room behind the cameras erupted in whispered panic. Someone coughed nervously. Producers frantically scribbled notes. Anderson tried to recover. Well, we can't verify the authenticity of this document. Karoline cut him off like a blade through paper. So you either vetted it already or you're quoting unverified leaks on national television. Her voice dropped to a deadly calm. Which is it, Mr. Cooper? The question hung in the air like a sword over his head. Karoline kept going, each word precise as a surgeon's cut. What you tried to do tonight is exactly what this memo predicted. It's not just a document. It's a playbook. And I've read it. Line by line, the internet exploded in real time. Clips hit social media before the segment even finished. The phrase line by line started trending instantly. Somewhere in the Republican war room, a strategist turned to his aide and whispered, "She just flipped it on live television." Because Karoline hadn't just defended herself. She had hijacked the entire show, and Anderson Cooper was no longer in control. The control room erupted into damage control mode. "Cut to break," someone shouted, but the executive producer had a different idea. "No, we let this play out." Anderson adjusted his collar, trying to steer the narrative back on course. "Ms. Leavitt, with all due respect, we brought you on to discuss national strategy, not attack the press." Karoline's response was ice cold. "I didn't attack. I read word for word from your source, your document." She held up the memo again. "Let's be very clear, I was invited here to respond to a leaked memo. But you weren't expecting me to bring the whole thing. You wanted a soundbite. You got a mirror instead." Her delivery was flawless, measured, sharp, impossible to interrupt. Anderson tried one more time. "This document raises questions about scripted messaging. Isn't it fair to say your appearances are tightly managed?" Karoline's laugh was soft but deadly. "Tightly managed," she repeated. "You mean like your segment rundown, like the planted memo drop? Like asking me about emotional tendencies, a phrase never used to describe male press secretaries?" The invisible audience seemed to lean through their screens. Karoline continued with the precision of a master chess player. "You want authenticity. Mr. Cooper, here's some. I was elected by no one. I was appointed. I stand behind that White House podium because the president trusts me to speak with clarity, not obedience. The party doesn't control my words. And after tonight, it's clear this network doesn't either." Anderson opened his mouth to reply. Nothing came out. Karoline had seized control of the tempo, the rhythm, the entire conversation. Online, the clips went viral instantly. One video of Karoline flipping through the memo hit 2 million views in an hour. A side-by-side meme appeared. Anderson froze in mid-blink on the left. Karoline reading with fire in her voice on the right. The caption, "She didn't bring notes, she brought receipts." Inside the network headquarters, senior producers debated in hushed tones. "Should we pull the clips from social media?" Too late. The audience has it now. By the time the segment ended, Karoline had turned what was meant to be a trap into a complete triumph. The outro music rolled. Anderson thanked her, his voice flat and rehearsed. Karoline stood up, shook his hand firmly, and whispered just loud enough for the hot mic to catch. "Next time, vet your leaks better." By sunrise, America wasn't talking about Anderson Cooper. They were talking about the memo and the woman who read it line by line, live on air. The aftermath was immediate and brutal. Conservative networks replayed the moment every 30 minutes. Clips flooded social media with thunderous music, slow zooms, and captions like, "She didn't stutter. She dominated." Even the network's own digital team reluctantly posted the full segment. Viewers demanded it. Within hours, the upload had over 3 million views. But the real earthquake hit inside the network's headquarters. A private meeting was called. Anderson sat at a long glass conference table surrounded by executives who looked like they'd seen a ghost. She flipped the script. One producer muttered. "We didn't vet the memo hard enough," Anderson admitted. "It wasn't supposed to be weaponized against us." The editorial director looked exhausted. "She brought the full version before we even quoted it. And it was real, that's the problem." There was a long pause, then a quiet voice from the back of the room. "She didn't walk into a trap. We did." Meanwhile, Karoline's team wasn't celebrating. They were working. Her press secretary posted a photo of Karoline the next morning, sitting on a bench outside the Capitol, sipping coffee with the memo folder on her lap. The caption read, "No teleprompter, no prep team, just facts." That post alone got half a million likes in 5 hours. Political reactions split down party lines, but something unexpected happened. Democrats accused the network of staging a botched ambush. Some whispered that they had handed Karoline a gift she turned into campaign gold. Republicans were electrified. Political commentators called it the most brutal live takedown in decades. Social media influencers retweeted the clips with one-word responses. savage. Deep inside party headquarters, a quiet discussion began. Should Karoline run for office? It started as whispers, then moved to private donor calls. "She's sharp," said one strategist. "She's clean, she's got youth and bite. And now she's media-proof." But Karoline stayed silent. No celebration tours, no follow-up interviews. She posted one sentence on social media. "The truth reads better out loud," and millions of people knew exactly what she meant. 2 days later, the network's headquarters felt less like a newsroom and more like a crime scene. Staffers walked on eggshells, avoiding eye contact, speaking in whispers. What was supposed to be routine political coverage had turned into a viral disaster. Everyone was looking for someone to blame. Anderson sat in his private office, blinds drawn, tie loosened, watching the clip again and again. Each time it hit harder. He hadn't expected her to bring the document, certainly not the complete, unredacted version. He hadn't expected her to dissect it like a prosecutor reading an indictment. His phone buzzed, a meeting invite with an urgent subject line: editorial protocol review. The network was in full panic mode. Meanwhile, Karoline's performance had become required viewing in political circles. Candidates were quoting her lines at fundraisers. Super PACs turned her appearance into campaign ads. Unscripted, undeniable, unshaken. Even moderate voters started paying attention. On social media, an independent voter posted, "I don't even agree with her politics, but that woman held her ground better than anyone I've seen on live TV. She made Cooper look like an amateur." The public response wasn't just praise. It was a power shift. Inside the network, the fallout became personal. The senior producer who approved the Memo segment was asked to take administrative leave. Internal guidelines were rewritten. The legal team began double-checking every segment involving leaked materials. Behind closed doors, some questioned Anderson's editorial judgment. He had been the one to raise the memo on air. He had tried to corner her. Now he was the one being called sloppy, unprepared, even biased. That night, a network insider leaked a behind-the-scenes photo to a media blog. Anderson, post-interview, slumped in his chair, eyes closed, hands folded on his desk. The headline read, "Karoline Leavitt did what most politicians can't: silence Anderson Cooper." Karoline saw the article. She didn't share it, didn't like it, didn't need to. The moment had already taken on a life of its own. She wasn't just a spokesperson anymore. She was becoming the story. By day 3, Karoline's inbox looked less like a press secretary's and more like a rising political star's. Interview requests poured in from international media, major podcasts, independent creators, even late-night talk shows. Everyone wanted the woman who read the memo. But Karoline turned them all down. She wasn't chasing the moment. She was the moment. The biggest shift came from politics itself. A hand-delivered envelope arrived at her Capitol Hill office. Inside was an invitation to keynote a major conservative summit. A handwritten note from a prominent senator read, "Karoline, you flipped the media narrative in under 7 minutes. You didn't just survive the network, you rewrote the rulebook. Let's talk about next moves." Republican strategists began asking questions that once seemed far-fetched. Should they be grooming her for Congress, or something bigger? Her name started circulating in rooms she'd never entered. The network struggled to contain its internal bleeding. Anonymous staff leaked behind-the-scenes details to media watchdogs. One memo revealed that Anderson's segment had bypassed normal vetting procedures. Another showed that producers knew the document lacked full context, but approved the ambush anyway. Public trust dropped. Viewership declined 11% that week. Inside Republican headquarters, Karoline's rise wasn't just being celebrated. It was being studied. Digital strategists mapped her post-interview surge, plus 370,000 social media followers, plus 1.2 million video views per hour, plus 40% favorability increase among young conservatives. Yet Karoline remained detached. No victory laps, no bragging on podcasts. She was quiet, deliberate, focused. That night, her team met in a private townhouse. A trusted aide leaned across the table and asked the question simmering since the takedown. "Karoline, have you thought about running?" She didn't answer immediately. She looked out the window at Washington glowing under cold streetlights. The noise outside, beyond the memo, beyond the debate, was growing louder. Finally, she spoke. "Not yet, but they're making it easier. The network wasn't going to take it lying down." By week's end, their editorial board quietly approved a reframing special for Monday night. The title, The Memo, Context, Power, and Political Spin. Anderson would host again, but this time with backup. 3 panelists, 2 media law experts, and 1 former Republican strategist turned critic. Their mission was clear: reframe what happened, reassert the network's version of events, and undermine Karoline's credibility without saying her name directly. The internal language was sharper. She weaponized our segment. She turned journalism into theater. She exploited a bad leak. What they didn't know was that Karoline already had the full panel lineup, the script outline, and the off-air prep notes. Her source? A disillusioned junior producer who'd messaged her communications director with one line: "They're coming Monday. Thought you should know." Karoline didn't react with fury or fear. She smiled, because she didn't need another segment. She needed only one more truth. That weekend, her team worked in silence. No tweets, no clips, no press leaks. Just one strategy. If the network wanted to talk context, Karoline would give them all of it. Monday night arrived. The segment began with Anderson center stage, flanked by experts. They dissected the memo's wording, claimed Karoline had cherry-picked paragraphs, and called her performance political theater. "She didn't win," one panelist declared. "She just dominated a news cycle." But 15 minutes into the broadcast, something unexpected happened. The network's live stream chat began flooding with the same message: "Check Karoline's page," because just before the segment aired, she had posted a PDF. Not commentary, not a response video. The full memo, scanned, dated, annotated with handwritten edits from the original author. It wasn't spin. It was raw evidence. And in the corner was a time-stamped screenshot showing the memo in Karoline's possession 2 weeks before the network's leak. The final caption read, "I don't spin. I prepare." The network had just tried to rewrite history. Karoline reminded America she'd written it first. The moment Karoline posted the full document, the internet exploded. Within minutes, "Check Karoline's page" was the top trending phrase. Across social media, users who didn't even follow her were sharing the file. When people downloaded it, they discovered something the network had tried to contextualize away. Handwritten notes in blue pen filled the margins. Corrections and initials from a known strategist confirmed the document's authenticity beyond doubt. One margin comment read, "Will go rogue if provoked. Proceed with care." That line alone lit up every platform. By the time Anderson's panel finished, their carefully worded segment, the court of public opinion, had already ruled. The network didn't look careful or composed. They looked caught trying to spin a second time, and losing worse than the first. Karoline posted nothing. She didn't gloat. She didn't respond. In silence, her truth had drowned out their noise. Morning headlines reflected the shift. Karoline Leavitt outsmarts network again with facts, not fury. A document, a war, a collapse. What the network got wrong twice. She let the PDF speak. It was brutal. Even progressive voices cracked under pressure. One liberal journalist posted, "I don't like her politics, but you can't fake preparation." Like that, the network got played. Inside Republican headquarters, strategists celebrated with spreadsheets, not champagne. Karoline's favorability among independents had surged another 14%. Among young voters, 22%. She doesn't scream, one data analyst observed. She dismantles. And somewhere inside the network, Anderson Cooper sat in his office again, facing the quiet he'd once commanded, but now couldn't control. At network headquarters, the silence became unbearable. Monday's attempted recovery hadn't just failed. It had backfired spectacularly. Staff morale cratered. Viewers were fleeing in real time. Anderson's inbox flooded with angry messages, not from Karoline supporters, but from longtime network loyalists asking one simple question. Why weren't? You ready? Inside the editorial floor, someone finally said it out loud. We handed her the match. She lit the fire twice. Senior executives met behind closed doors. They weren't talking about stories anymore. They were talking about reputation control. Phrases like narrative discipline and rotational anchor reassignment were floated. One executive even proposed cutting Anderson's primetime slot temporarily until things cooled down. Anderson didn't argue. He sat silent, tired. He looked older after just 5 days. I've interviewed heads of state, he muttered. I wasn't supposed to get checkmated by a 29-year-old with a binder and a cross. Meanwhile, Karoline maintained her silence. Not a single interview, not one follow-up tweet. Her team removed the Memo PDF from her profile after 24 hours, just long enough for the internet to immortalize it. But the impact had settled into something permanent. Republican operatives began including her in future Senate projections. Donors asked when she was moving from press briefings to primaries. Even moderates from swing states started asking about her. Is she for real? She didn't even flinch. In coffee shops, in bar corners, on morning talk panels, one phrase kept coming. Back. Karoline Leavitt made the network blink twice. At the White House, the president was briefed personally on the fallout. He leaned back in his chair, grinned, and said, "She didn't defend herself. She exposed them." The next morning, Anderson Cooper sent a private email to the network president. No subject line, no greeting. It simply read, "We underestimated her. We lost." It took Karoline Leavitt just under 7 minutes to change how America viewed live media confrontations. She did it without yelling, without storming out, without even raising her voice. What she raised instead was the standard. By week's end, the clip had surpassed 18 million views across platforms. High school debate teams studied her performance. Political science professors assigned it in media ethics courses. Even late-night comedians acknowledged it with reluctant nods. She didn't just dodge the bullet. She caught it, read the serial number, and mailed it back. But Karoline never took a victory lap. She refused every follow-up segment, every "can we have you back on" request. Instead, she stood behind the White House podium like any other day, press folder in hand, silver, cross glinting under the lights, voice steady as ever. "Next question," she'd say. Because that's what you do when you've already answered the biggest one. The real moment wasn't even on camera. It came 4 days later in a quiet hallway outside the Capitol. A young intern, barely 20, oversized blazer, trembling hands, approached her nervously. "Miss Leavitt?" she asked. Karoline turned, warm but direct. "Yes?" The girl hesitated. "I just wanted to say, you didn't just prove them wrong. You proved we don't have to be loud to be strong." Karoline smiled. "Then I did my job," and walked away. That same day, a new headline appeared. Karoline Leavitt emerges as Generation Z's most feared media adversary. But to her, it wasn't about fear. It was about facts. When Anderson Cooper tried to corner her with a single quote from a leaked memo, she did what no one expected. She pulled out the whole thing, read it line by line, and flipped a national narrative, in the time it takes most politicians to clear their throat. In the end, she didn't defeat Anderson Cooper. She defeated assumption, and that's what made it stick. Because in an era of noise, the one who speaks calmly with the facts always leaves the deepest echo. They tried to trap her with a memo. They underestimated her silence, and they forgot one simple rule of the modern battlefield. Whoever controls the narrative controls the nation. Karoline Leavitt didn't shout. She didn't flinch. She read line by line. She didn't just defend herself. She flipped the camera, turned the script inside out, and showed millions what happens when truth meets preparation. This wasn't just a moment. It was a message. To every young voice told to sit down, to every woman called emotional, to every outsider branded a puppet, Karoline proved that sometimes the most powerful response is a document in your hand and a microphone in front of you. If this story moved you, made you think, or made you proud, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Because stories like this aren't just about politics. They're about power and the ones brave enough to use it.